Carl Switzer has one of the most recognizable faces in America. As a child, this beloved actor played the role of Alfalfa in the short film series Our Gang. These comedic short films followed a group of young, poor children and their many misadventures. Alfalfa, with his freckled face and iconic cowlick, was just one member of the gang, also known as the Little Rascals. The gang also featured characters such as Spanky, Buckwheat, Darla, Porky, Froggy, Waldo, Woim, and Butch. Between 1922 and 1938, Hal Roach created a total of 220 short films centered around these characters. The series was then produced by MGM and continued until 1944. One of the first directors of the short films, Robert F. McGowan, was greatly praised for his directing style. Up until this point in American film, child actors were expected to behave like little adults. McGowan, however, wanted to capture the natural essence of children. Because many of the children were too young to even read the scripts, he simply explained what was expected to happen in each scene and let many of the young actors improvise. Sadly, he stopped directing in 1933, and the new directors took a much more streamlined approach. Still, McGowan's directing style would greatly influence film and TV for years to come. While the show did feature a large cast, all of whom were incredibly hilarious and charming, Alfalfa was a fan favorite. He was played by young actor Carl Switzer, who would earn fame for the iconic role. Even decades after the show ended, he's fondly remembered by much of America for the role. There have been many new iterations of Our Gang since the original short film series ended in 1936, featuring different actors, directors, and writers. Still, it seems no other actor has been able to quite capture Alfalfa's essence as well as Carl Switzer. Unfortunately, even the sweetest of children have to grow up someday, and after young Carl left behind the role of Alfalfa, he fell into a rather troubled life. In this video, we're going to take a look at the shocking and tragic life that befell him after his role in Our Gang, as well as some behind-the-scenes facts about the beloved short film series. Carl Switzer had a troubled life after Our Gang. For many child stars, Our Gang was the perfect lifting-off point to begin their long and prolific careers. However, not all the stars who appeared were so successful. Many of the actors found themselves typecast into the same kinds of roles they originally portrayed in the short film series. Their characters were so easily recognized that directors and producers had a difficult time envisioning them as portraying any other kind of character. Sadly, Carl Switzer was just one of these unfortunate young actors. Believe it or not, Carl only joined the cast of Our Gang in 1935, and his tenure on the show ended in 1940. But after 5 years of playing Alfalfa, he was already too recognizable. He found a little success immediately after leaving the show, gaining a small role in the film I Love You Again. He had a few supporting roles, but as an adult, he had a hard time finding work. In the 1950s, he attempted to find success in TV, but after a few more guest stars and minor roles, he gave up. His final role as an actor was in the 1958 film The Defiant Ones. Finally, he decided to spend more time involved in his hobby as a hunting dog breeder and trainer. Carl Switzer's tragic death. Having such difficulty finding film and TV roles, Switzer was plagued by financial troubles. In 1958, he cut down 15 pine trees in Sequoia National Forest, with the illegal plan to sell them as Christmas trees. He was caught, however, and sentenced to a year's probation, and had to pay a fine of $225. However, those who knew Switzer as a child were not at all surprised to find out he was a criminal. On the set of Our Gang, he was notoriously troublesome. In one incident, he hid fishhooks in Spanky's trouser pockets, causing the poor boy to get stitches in his backside. He was also the mastermind behind several other dangerous and irresponsible pranks. While you can expect most children to outgrow these destructive tendencies, it seems Switzer did not. As an adult, after divorcing his wife Diane Collingwood, Switzer fell into alcoholism out of depression. Aside from the Christmas tree incident, he had many other run-ins with the law. In 1959, his troublesome nature caught up to him again. He had promised to train the hunting dog of an old friend, Samuel Moses Stilts. However, while the dog was in Carl Switzer's possession, it ran off. Stilts insisted he pay him back for the price of the dog, but Switzer simply didn't have the money. He offered a reward for anyone who could find the dog. When a local eventually found and returned the mutt, Switzer paid $50, which is equivalent to about $450 today. A few days later, after a night of drinking, Switzer marched over to Stiltz's house with a friend named Jack Pyatt. He insisted that Stiltz at least reimburse him for the reward, but Stiltz refused. They began fighting, and Stiltz later accounted Switzer hit him over the head with a clock. Finally, Stiltz retreated to his room and returned with a gun. More fighting ensued, and Switzer allegedly pulled out a knife and shouted, "I'm going to kill you." Stiltz fired the gun, fatally shooting Switzer. He died before he even reached the hospital on January 21, 1959, when he was just 31 years old. He was buried in Hollywood, California, in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Later, both his brother and father would be buried next to him. For the longest time, the death of Carl Switzer was said to be in self-defense, but decades later, a new witness came forward, offering evidence that changed the long-told story of Switzer's death. Make sure you stick around until the end, because we're going to reveal the testimony of one surprising witness. And if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure you give it a like, and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. How Carl Switzer landed the role of Alfalfa. When Carl was cast as Alfalfa in 1935, he was incredibly lucky. The show was a favorite across the nation, and many parents were dying to get their own children to appear on the show. Shockingly, both Shirley Temple and Mickey Rooney attempted to get on, but both failed. Carl and his brother Harold, however, both made it on the show. The two loved to sing and perform together and became favorites in their hometown. The studio behind Our Gang, Hal Roach Studios, opened a cafeteria called Our Gang Cafe. Both Carl and Harold were sightseeing in California while visiting family and happened upon the cafe. While inside, they began performing and singing together. It just so happened that at the time, Hal Roach himself was present. He was impressed by the performance and eventually requested they audition. Both made it onto the show, although Carl's brother only performed as a background character. A shocking new testimony. Decades after Carl's death in 2001, new information came to light. Samuel Moses Stiltz's stepson, Tommy Corrigan, had been present the night of Switzer's death. In fact, during the altercation, he had nearly been shot by a misfire of his stepfather's gun. While Samuel had claimed that Switzer hit him over the head with a clock and also pulled a knife on him, Tommy Corrigan claimed that neither of these were true. He said it was actually Switzer's friend, Jack Syot, who had hit Stiltz with the clock. Furthermore, Corrigan insisted Switzer had never pulled a knife on Stiltz. Tommy may have only been 14 at the time, but he remains resolute in his testimony. Switzer was not shot in self-defense, but out of anger. Unfortunately, we'll never know what happened on that fateful night, except that it resulted in the tragic death of a once beloved star. Do you think Switzer was mostly to blame for his own death, or do you blame his old friend, Samuel Moses Stiltz? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Facts Verse for more.